All right, you're all set.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be giving this presentation about public speaking. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Laura Podesta. And for many years, I was in front of the camera as a TV news correspondent. And I worked all over the country, ending up at CBS News in New York. In this picture, you see me here in Washington, D.C. And I would deliver live reports about breaking news to hundreds of thousands of people, depending on the day. So I learned how to get comfortable being uncomfortable in front of the camera. And I say it like that. I give this the title of my presentation because it is a practice to be able to get comfortable in a high stress situation, whether that means for you doing an interview for a dream job or giving a speech in front of hundreds of people at a wedding or perhaps pitching your business. It's not natural to be in those high stress environments, but you can start getting comfortable with all of those symptoms you might experience, like clammy hands or more saliva in your mouth and just kind of like a cotton mouth or shakiness, anything that sort of appears, shortness of breath is a big one for a lot of people. I'm going to be teaching you over the next half an hour or so about ways to recognize those symptoms, overcome those symptoms, and really present yourself the best to your ability. So I break this down into three P's because I want this to be very memorable for you. My name is Laura Podesta, so I was like, Podesta P's. We'll make this simple. And this is something I want you to think about every day. I want it to be something when you're brushing your teeth and you're looking in the mirror and you are about to go about your day. How can you be more communicative and more clear in that communication using the three P's? The first P is the most obvious, but because of that, it's the one people normally skip, which is starting now. I hope you never do again. And that is preparation. So, what do I mean by preparation? Preparation isn't just I'm going to be writing down, I'm going to be typing out an email and with the points that I plan to say at the meeting. No, I want you to take it a step further and actually physically write out with pen and paper if you can the the points that you plan to make in a meeting or in a speech. I want you to write out physically because there's a muscle mind connection that will help you memorize those words. Then I want you to rehearse out loud that that speech, or in this case, let's say it's a pitch for a business. I want you to physically speak it out loud. And what you're doing by talking it out loud is you're allowing your muscles, your lips, your tongue, your cheeks to practice saying those words in a certain cadence, in a certain rhythm, and they will remember that so that when you're actually doing it in that high stakes, high stress moment in front of those investors or in front of a boss, your body is saying, I got this. I remember this. Something people also don't tend to realize is the first time you speak something out loud, the sound of your own voice reverberating in your skull can be surprising. So I want you to practice hearing yourself out loud before you step into the room and you have to do it perfectly. So what I would do in TV news is I would, like I said, write out my script on a reporter's notebook, as it was called. A lot of my friends, they would write it on their iPhones and tap it out with their phone with their thumbs on the phone. But I found that I made less mistakes, verbal mistakes, because I was physically writing it out. Then I would speak it out loud, like I just mentioned in those rehearsals, sometimes 10 to 15 times before I gave the report. Now, I wouldn't say the entire report out loud because I just didn't have the time. to do it 10 to 20 times, but I would speak out loud the first 15 seconds or so over and over again because it's in that first 10 to 15 seconds that all of those symptoms of the stress, like the shakiness and the clamminess and the high heart rate, it spikes in the very beginning and then it levels out. So if you can get through those first 10 to 15 seconds with this preparation, you're golden. One way to keep yourself accountable as you do this preparation, so it's not just like I'm saying it over and over again into the mirror, is to open up your Android or iPhone and to use a voice memo and to speak it out loud and then play it back and hear yourself and notice where you're umming or awing or adding likes or pausing or where maybe you're speeding up too much and then improve yourself after you listen to the voice memo. I'm putting a lot out there, so stop me if you have any questions, Alex.
Yep, so everything's good so far. Thanks, Laura.
Okay. Once you've done voice memo a few times, then I would recommend graduating onto video. So doing that again with your iPhone or maybe with your laptop and watching yourself back. This is very uncomfortable for a lot of people. It was uncomfortable for me, even though this was my job, being on camera, is critiquing yourself and watching how you appear. You might notice that you're using your hands excessively, or if you're a woman, you have long hair, you're touching your hair, or maybe you're doing what I call the pigeon pose. You're kind of bobbing back and forth as you speak. There's a lot of tics that we humans have, and it's a way that we're trying to exert energy usually, where you were trying to keep all of our thoughts in a line and communicate perfectly, but we're stressed. And in order to get out some of that energy, we do the tics. We move our hands or we cross and uncross our legs and sway or and I want you to just the first step is recognizing what you're doing because then you can begin to make mental notes to stop doing that. And the video helps with that. Finally, and this is the last step of preparation, is you go back to that reporter's notebook that you had or that note that you'd taken with your script, and you'll begin to notice that the number of times you practice and rehearse, you might not need that script anymore. However, there are some people like myself where just having a script nearby the computer, if you're on a Zoom, or for me, it was holding the script off camera, but when I was standing in front of the camera doing the live news report, just holding it there gave me a feeling of a safety net. And that boosted my confidence. So if you think you fall into that category too, where, okay, having my script nearby is going to make me feel like I can always refer to it if I need to, then I would also recommend having that script there. All right, guys, we made it through the first P. Any questions?
When people say when with fillers and
Yes.
hand motions, you mentioned there could be too much of hand motions, or when people say right, is that how do you correct those? Like when people, I think a lot of times I hear people say they'll say their statement and then they'll end it with right or right.
Well, let's first start with the hand motions you mentioned. And when you watch television and you see news reporters or you see a politician or anyone who's doing a lot of public speaking, they have a tendency to hold their hands into sometimes it's like a triangle by their navel. And it's a way to keep their posture up, but also keep their hands pretty still. Some people clasp their hands like this and hold it sort of by their hip height, and that's also helpful. I find that when you touch your hands together, you will have a tendency not to move them quite as much. Of course, there are people that naturally love to use their hands, and I don't want to take away your personality. I just want you to recognize that it can be distracting for some viewers and listeners if you're always using your hands. So So that's why the video is helpful because you can watch back and you can judge yourself and say like, okay, I liked how I gesticulated here, but maybe I didn't need to do it here and here. Regarding filler words. So I'll get to this a little bit later in the presentation with the third P, but filler words are, well, the first one about right and going up with turning every sentence into a question. That's something a lot of people do. And again, doing the voice memo, listening back, listening to the video, you're going to recognize that you're doing that inflection at the end of every sentence. And let's actually move on to the next P because I will address this here too. So the next P I call presence. Presence is a loaded word and it's not easily defined. So I like to ask you, any client I work with, what do they think makes a public speaker or a celebrity or a politician or maybe even a friend or a relative who has amazing presence? What about them do you think makes them look so good and sound so good to you?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is their ability to captivate you with whatever they're doing or saying.
Got it. Okay, tell me a little bit more about that word captivate. So, what are they doing to captivate you, do you think?
It might have to do with the way they're presenting their talk, or the way that they are telling the story in a way that it keeps your interest.
Okay, I
Mm.
like that. So,
Yeah.
their storytelling.
Mm.
You like their storytelling. You like their I mean, I hear a lot of different things from different people I do this presentation for. Some people say it's their confidence or
Mm.
the fact that they make you laugh. It's very entertaining. And some people say it's they have a gravitas about them. They seem very smart. And all of this falls under the umbrella that I call energy.
Mm.
And the good news is that your energy as a speaker is can be learned. It can be taught. I know this because I experienced it. When I went to CBS News, I was assigned a very early shift. I was doing the morning news, and I would have to wake up at like 1 in the morning in order to get to the newsroom and be on the news by 4 a.m. And then I did a 7 a.m. hit. And it was in the middle of the night. So I had very little energy. I would drink coffee and I would hope, I could get my energy levels up. And I would basically rile myself up in a way, like pump myself up so that I could have this energy. I would create this energy so that when it was rolling and live, all of a sudden I'm like energetic Laura. So how did I do this? The f- I boil it down to the fact that we all have a voice, and our voice is our instrument. Are you a musician, Alex, or did you ever play an instrument growing up?
Yeah, I am. I play guitar and sing a little bit.
Amazing. Okay, so you've read music before, and when we look at a sheet of music, it tells us how long the notes are. It tells us where the crescendos and decrescendos are. It tells us, is it going to be staccato, like really uh, articulated, or is it going to be, is it legato, like very,
Yep. Mhm.
really long and beautiful and drawn out? And when we look at a piece of paper, when we look at the script that we wrote out for ourselves, we don't have any of those indicators, right? We don't have notes. But I want you to begin thinking about your speech, your pitch, your conversation as a piece of music where you are going to be storytelling with your voice the same way that you storytell already with your friends on the weekends or when you're reading a book out loud to a small child. We all naturally use our voice to its full ability, but we have a tendency, most of us, when we read a script, We go into monotone voice and we don't change our tone, we don't change our pace. We make it very, we read it like with our eyes instead of with our voice. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you can take away all of these other kind of preconceived notions about a great public speaker. Oh, that they're super smart, they have great confidence, that they were born for the stage, and realize what's the same among all of these great public speakers? They're using their voice to all of its ability. Yes, they're using their eyes too, and they're using their bodies. Like they're sitting back and they have presence that way too. But it really boils down to the voice. And you know this because you listen to the radio or you listen to a podcast, and people can draw you in with just their voice. You don't even need to see their face. I mentioned eye contact is very important because eyes are going to be allowing you in, the viewer in, and letting the viewer know that you're paying attention to them and vice versa. If you're just reading your script or you're distracted by someone over there, that's distracting for the viewer. So eye contact is really great for focus to keep people listening. Posture, I mentioned, is another way to get that presence across in the physicality. But presence is two, I'm sorry, posture is two-sided because posture not only allows the audience to look at you and say, hey, they know what they're talking about, they're confident, but also posture helps you as the speaker to lift your diaphragm, to breathe better, to get in all that oxygen, which tells your brain, we got this. We're not oxygen deprived. We're not stressed out. Like we can speak. We can do this. So posture is not just about rolling your shoulders back and sitting up straight, but which of course I want you to do. It's also about putting your feet on the ground, both feet on the ground, your back against the chair, grounding yourself in any place where you have a hard surface so that your body in those high stress situations can be as grounded as possible. We made it through two of the three P's, Alex. Any other questions for this one?
When you say the word energy, what comes to your mind in terms of what captivates you and what about that is presence for you with all of the experience that you have?
With energy, like who can I think of that has the best energy and all of that?
Yeah, like when you think about presence and energy, what do you when you see when you're looking at someone,
Uh,
what are those identifiers or those mark of identifiers that it makes you say that person has energy or presence?
well, it's noticing that they're using the full capability of their voice. If someone is doing the monotone, I'm just reading sentence after sentence without any break, I don't feel the energy as much. If they're looking down, I don't feel the energy as much. If they look physically uncomfortable with their posture hunched or no, they're making themselves smaller, I don't notice the energy as much. Energy to me is like I mean, it's like this force, but a communicative force
Mhm.
where the person is expressing what they want to express, saying what they want to say, and allowing me to receive it. So I do believe that you can have incredible energy even if you're telling a very sad story or something super happy. The
Mhm.
energy is about the force of communication and and using your voice to do that and body to do that.
You mentioned cadence, and have
Mhm.
you seen the movie Anchorman?
Yes, I have. Yes.
There's this cadence that sort of exists between all anchors
Newscasters.
and newscasters. Do you
Oh yeah, and I
find
could turn that on if you want.
do you find that is it just because it's become an industry standard
Standard.
or expectation, or is it the way that is everyone sort of being trained in the same way?
That's such an interesting question, Alex. No one has ever asked me that, but I think it's both. I think, yes, it's an industry standard. When you turn on the TV and you watch a newscaster, you do expect that certain kind of cadence and tone and the
Hmm.
way that they deliver the report. So we are trained to speak like that because that's what listeners are used to. So it's kind of like the beast is fed from both sides. But another reason why I think newscasters use that cadence is that they're delivering so many stories a day of varying subjects, of varying detail, that it's like a way to slot in all of those different stories without reinventing the wheel. When you listen to like a story on Audible and you listen to an actor read aloud a chapter book, that actor has been given days, if not weeks, to go through the chapter, to write notes in the margin. Here's what's happening here, and to act it out. So y- the newscasters don't have that time to really like go into every script and emphasize one word versus another, and they're not acting. So it becomes like a formula for news. That being said, there's a lot of great newscasters who somehow don't put on that mask of a voice. And I don't think I was had too much of that formula, I hope. Because I wanted to always reach the viewers and hopefully like right now when you're hearing me talk, I don't have that newscaster voice. So I would try and use this a lot.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks, Laura.
No, that's a great question. All right, the third and final P, not too long. This one is the most difficult to master, but if you can do it, then you are like going from a B plus public speaker to an A plus public speaker. And that is the pause. So, what do I mean by pause? It's not just I'm taking the same space of a second at every sentence end. It's more about giving yourself space to breathe, to contemplate what is the subject matter I'm trying to get across, and taking the time to speak it out loud. So, speaking slower is a big part of the pause. Naturally, we speed up when we're in stressful situations. When we're breathing shallowly and we're not sure if we have enough breath, we end up speaking really fast. So, the third P is a reminder to slow down, to breathe. It's also a reminder to emphasize what you're trying to get across. We have a tendency to think, okay, I have 5 minutes to pitch myself, or 5 minutes to pitch my, 5 minutes to pitch myself for a job interview. If I talk faster, they're going to learn more about me and I'll get the job. I'll explain my resume quickly and they'll know how much experience I have. But in reality, everyone has a capacity of how much information they can take in whatever amount of time. And then if you exceed that, because you're talking so much and giving them so much information, then it's just frustrating to the listener. So, and you're not getting across what you wanted to emphasize. You're just spewing as much as you can in that amount of time. So, breaking down, if say it's an elevator pitch, which we'll get to after this pause P, but if you're able to break down what it is you want to get across to the audience, the pause helps you to define that. Finally, pause allows a brief break to clarify what you just said, to allow someone to ask a question, to to basically make it make what is not existent because it's sound, you're sort of organizing it with a pause. Getting back to that music sheet or the idea that you're reading something, when you think about a book and when you open up a physical book, everything is organized for you visually. You can see the table of contents. You can see chapter one and the title of chapter one. And then you can see the first paragraph and the breaks between paragraphs. You can also see individual sentences because you'd see the period at the end. When you're listening to a speaker, you have no idea where they are because you're not seeing their script. You don't know if they're in the middle or the end. You don't know if this is the first point you're making, their first point they're making, or the last one. So pausing helps you to organize for that listener. You're saying the title of your speech, pause. Going into the introduction of that speech, pause. Now let's talk about one of the supporting points, pause. Sub-supporting points. Like you're breaking it up audibly because they don't have it visually. Little conceptual here, but we like to go deep. What do you think, Alex, about the pause?
I think it's something that I noticed uh, right away when you started presenting. You would give a pretty nice pause. And I think that for some reason that kept me, for lack of better words, like on guard of what, like waiting for what you were gonna say next, just because we're not used to that pause, that audible pause in someone's presentation normally. Let's say we're at a work meeting or we're at a meeting outside and normally people are just they just keep going and there's no pause there. So I think it's really a useful tool for sure to help, especially if you do have a lot of fillers or you have a lot of things that you do in between or while you're saying things. And so the pause helps with, like what you said, clarity and emphasis.
And you just reminded me about your earlier question about filler words and using likes or ums or ahs. And replacing filler words with a pause is totally doable for anyone. It might feel a little uncomfortable at first because you're not used to it, but you'll get more and more. And all of a sudden, your speaking sounds so much more professional. And all you're doing is just silence instead of the likes or the ums or the ahs.
Mm-hmm.
I also liked what you said, Alex, about how I kept you on guard. I kind of kept you on the edge of your seat with the pause. You didn't know if I'd maybe call on you or maybe I had forgotten what I was going to say. A pause
Right.
is unusual these days. And it's a really good tool, like you mentioned, to keep people engaged, which in our attention economy is a huge, uh, just something that's so important for people to realize what keeps attention. We're also used to scrolling, 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 and
Mm-hmm.
only having 5 seconds of attention. So if you can keep attention, amazing. Okay, so you've mastered the three P's, you've graduated. Now the prep, presence, pause. I have a couple more things I want to say, if that's all right with you.
Yep.
We good with time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, this is a visual that I just want to talk to anyone listening who really is still thinking to themselves, okay, Laura, I'm going to do the three P's, but I still think I'm going to feel nervous when I have to speak in front of a group. I get stage fright. This slide is for you. And believe me, even though I might come across confident and like I know exactly what I'm doing, I also dealt with such bad nerves when I was working in news. And what finally really unlocked something in my brain to help me feel calmer was the idea that I My job was to gift wrap a message and to hand that message, that gift, to the audience. That was my only job. It wasn't about me, Laura. It wasn't about the audience. It was about wrapping that message in the best words and the best detail I could find. In this case, it was the news. So, like the most up-to-date information from police or firefighters. And how can I wrap it in such a way that it's an interesting story? And then my only job was to just get it across to the viewers, to hand it to them, hand that beautifully gift wrapped gift. So I don't want you to put pressure on yourself. If you are saying ums and ahs and likes and pausing crazily and but you're still able to get the crux of your message across to your audience, you've you've done your job. You can still refine all those skills, but at the end of the day, the most important part of communication is getting the message, the gift of that message across to your viewers, to the listeners. And once you kind of take that pressure off you and put it onto the message, I think that's helpful. All right. Let's talk briefly about that message. So, Alex, you are my guinea pig because you're my listener right now. I want you to practice your elevator pitch. Now, you don't necessarily have to be an entrepreneur or a reporter or a politician to have an elevator pitch. Everyone needs an elevator pitch. You need to introduce yourself at a party and say who you are and say what you do. And I want you to do that over the next minute or so is kind of define who, what, when, where, why, and how. So for me, I'll just say mine. That way you're not totally lost. But who am I? I'm Laura Podesta. I'm a public speaking coach, and I help people across the US and the world when they have an on-camera opportunity. I coach them via Zoom at their own home, and I've heard from feedback that the preparation I give them is priceless. I use my 3 Ps method, which I've developed over the last decade. So I explained who I am, what I do, who I coach, when I do it, where I do it, why I do it, and how I do it in 25 seconds or so. You want to try that, Alex?
Sure.
All right, I'll go backwards just to, if I can do that. Nope, sorry. Okay, there we go. Here's yours.
Well, my name is Alex Tao. I am the Anything World Manager. Essentially, what that means is I help facilitate and find experts such as Laura to come and share their expertise with our Adams County residents here in Colorado. The reason why we do this is so that we can offer um, resources and access to things that people might not normally be able to access or connect with. And so, in this case, having access to experts who are professionals in their field with speaking and have that experience. And essentially, we take a hybrid approach right now. We offer programs both in person and online.
Great. How did that feel?
Felt good, succinct.
Do you think it could have been shorter or or do you think that it was the right length?
I think I was thinking about the when, and I think that led me on a different path than I had anticipated. But I think that would be something that I could shorten or make a little bit more precise.
Got it. Yeah, when can be omitted if it's something you do every day. You don't have to say that.
Mm,
Or it could be something to explain how long you've been doing what you're doing.
mm,
Um, but I want anyone listening to take this grid and apply it even when they're talking about something that's happening over the weekend and you're trying to explain it to your spouse or to a friend quickly and succinctly. These are the tenets of a good story: who, what, when, where, why, and how. And it's something that journalists know, it's what marketers know, it's what authors know. So I want you to apply it to any part of your communication moving forward. And that's going to help your listener get all the details they need quickly and for them to, use or make a judgment about or carry on the conversation. But regarding your elevator pitch, I also think everyone listening, if you're able to write down that elevator pitch, like I said and what Alex said, and kind of have that handy and go back to the prep and say it out loud to yourself, voice memo it, listen back, you're also going to have a better idea of yourself and what you value because you're laying it out in a way that it's like, this is what I do, and this is how I do it every day, and this is who I help. It's very clarifying for people. All right. I can give you a quick debrief on memorization, Alex, or we can spend the rest of the time with kind of questions and answers. What would you prefer?
We can end with the memorization piece.
Okay, sounds good. And I'm in New York City, so there was a siren that just went by. I hope it wasn't too loud. Okay. I always end my my talks with a little bit of a breakdown of memorization. Memorization is very subjective. If there was a pill we could take where we can all memorize a piece of text, I mean, that's a billion dollar idea. It just doesn't exist. And memorization is very different for everyone. Just think back to school. Some people would read something and be able to internalize it. Other people had to write it out. Other people were drawing doodles that would help them memorize. So I'm going to talk about three different ways that I've memorized texts that have been very helpful, and my clients have told me that at least one of them has resonated with them deeply. So I hope it's the same for you. The first one is the dot method. I call it the dot method, or maybe we could call it the star method because it kind of looks like a constellation of stars. And this is the idea that growing up in school, in college, when we were told to learn something, we were usually given a list of days of the week or memorization, multiplication tables or state capitals. And our brains got very trained to think, okay, I need to go down this list in order to remember everything. And if I forgot one of the things on the list, help me because I can't get to the next one without remembering the one above it. And that's not how we speak. That's not how conversations work. We don't normally go down a list like with an agenda like at work. We talk about things, we talk around things that that saying. So I want you to start thinking about important points that you're trying to make, or even speeches or pitches, and how each point can be said at different times, and think about the links that you can create to each point so that you start on different uh, parts of the story. An example of this is I'll just talk about TV news. I can go through my resume and say where I started, and then I went to New Mexico, then I went to Chicago, and then I went to CBS News, give a linear, or I can talk about it more holistically. I love communicating. It's because of my career in TV news. This is something I learned from several bosses, including ones in New York. I'm not doing it a linear yearly way anymore. Okay. That's one way of memorization. What I love about the dot method, just to leave on this point, is it really just de-stresses you because you're like, I don't have to think about a certain order of things anymore. I'm going to tell my story. Maybe I'll hit everything. Maybe I'll forget one or two points. It's okay. It'll get across. Number two, this is very helpful for reporters. I would create a word and then assign that first a letter in that word to a point I wanted to make. So let's take the word once. And this is for a business person who's trying to pitch their business. So once you have your origin story, this is why I started my business. This is why I created this product. The need in the market. I learned that it didn't exist, and everyone said if you could create it, they will come, the customers will come. See the customer impact. Once the customers bought it, they loved it. And then the edge, like no one else is doing this at this point. I don't expect anyone else to do it because XYZ. So you're pitching your business using the once word and remembering each thing to say. But you can apply this acronym method to so many things. Getting back to news reporting, if I had if I was standing in front of a building that was on fire and I needed to remember that there were victims and firefighters and it was started in the basement and there were 8 emergency vehicles on site, I would use the acronym FIVE for firefighters. It started in the basement, vehicles on site, and emergency workers, or victims and emergency workers. So you can use it for anything. And that helps you to kind of quickly remember, okay, what did that, what was that letter associated with? It's a little bit easier than just like a bullet point. And the last memorization technique for visual learners and for artists is the storyboarding method. This one a lot of people love because it's the idea of physically writing out or drawing out, I should say, what you want to say, and then imagining that drawing in your head or even having it in front of you during your presentation and being able to speak through that illustration or that doodle. And that is it for my presentation. We crammed a lot in the last 40 minutes or so. Thanks, Alex.
That was awesome. Thank you, Laura.
You got it. Do you want me to stop my share or?